Hello and welcome to Owning the Narrative. I am Bulow. The show will feature the top news of the week, complete with my observations, and even a little bit of sarcasm thrown in. The top news stories will be taken from my morning news briefings that I write on the Rick Bulow New Media blog every weekday morning. If you go on to like what you see, smash that thumbs up button. And now, let's go right into the news. Currently on the Senate floor, there are senators speaking on the Coney Barrett confirmation, and it's already said and done. Right now, they're in the 30-hour debate based on the vote yesterday afternoon. Let's go right into this article here from FoxNews.com. Senate votes to limit debate on Barrett's Supreme Court nomination, moving toward final vote Monday evening. The Senate voted 51-48 Sunday afternoon to limit debate on the Supreme Court nomination of Judge Amy Coney Barrett, setting up a vote for her confirmation for Monday evening. Sunday's vote limited debate over President Trump's court appointee to 30 hours, meaning the full Senate will be able to hold a confirmation vote Monday beginning at approximately 7:26 p.m. Eastern Time. Judge Amy Coney Barrett of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit is a stellar nominee in every single respect, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican Kentucky, said on the Senate floor following the vote. Her intellectual brilliance is unquestioned. Her command of the law is remarkable. Her integrity is above reproach. Two Republicans voted against ending debate. Senators Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. Murkowski has, however, indicated that she will vote to confirm Barrett. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat, New York, rallied against his Republicans for swiftly moving to fill a court vacancy in the weeks before a general presidential election, after refusing to do the same when there was a vacancy early in the final year of President Barack Obama's presidency. Republicans promised they'd follow their own standard if the situation was reversed, Schumer said. Guess not. Democrats took to Twitter to voice their opposition prior to voting against moving forward with the confirmation process. Judge Barrett's nomination poses a direct threat to members of the LGBT community. Senator Dianne Feinstein, Democrat, California, pointing to an upcoming Supreme Court case dealing with adoption in the LGBT community. Previously, Supreme Court justices needed to clear a 60-vote threshold to advance to the High Court, a tradition that forced nominees to win bipartisan support, but McConnell changed the standard in 2017 to allow for a simple majority, a vote that allowed for the confirmation of President Trump's previous two nominees, Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. Former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, Democrat, Nevada, first eliminated the 60-vote threshold in 2013 to overcome GOP stonewalling of President Obama's nominations to the lower courts and the executive branch, known as invoking the nuclear option at the time. We kept the higher standard in place for the Supreme Court. Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat, Connecticut, claimed that Barrett's confirmation could jeopardize the Affordable Care Act, a talking point that many Democrats made during her confirmation hearings before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Confirming Amy Coney Barrett, who actively opposes the ACA, would be devastating for millions of Americans, Blumenthal tweeted. Just ask my constituents who would face real harm in real ways if the Supreme Court guts the ACA. Now, Barrett has not indicated to anyone how she might rule if given the opportunity to sit on the court when all arguments are presented over the future of the ACA in November. She has criticized the 2012 Supreme Court opinion that upheld the law by deeming the penalty attached to the individual mandate to be a tax. Despite this, Barrett pointed out that the current case hinges on separate issues. Now, like I had said, 30 vote with 30 hours is in, so we're just under 2 hours for the nomin for debate. Actually, I think about yeah just about 2.5 hours or so until debate starts. So things with and until debate ends, so things could be rather interesting up until that time. And got this from Taylor Millard over at Hot Air. Which says Amy Coney Barrett can be confirmed Monday for SCOTUS. Judge Amy Coney Barrett can be confirmed as the next U.S. Supreme Court Justice on Monday. The Senate voted in favor of opening up 30 hours worth of debate on her nomination today via the Hill. While Sunday's vote is only a procedural step, it underscores that Republicans have the votes to place Barrett on the Supreme Court just days before the November 3rd election. The timetable will set a new record for how close to a presidential election a nominee has been confirmed to the country's highest court. The Supreme Court fires up the GOP base, handing Republicans a victory to tout as they try to shore up support in the final days before the election. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican Kentucky in particular, has put a premium on confirming Trump's judicial nominees, arguing it's the best thing the party can do to have a long-term impact on the direction of the country. Democrats obviously see Monday's coming vote as doomed for America from Politico and their fight against Barrett. Democrats have focused almost exclusively on the future of the Affordable Care Act. The Supreme Court is set to hear oral arguments November 10 as part of the Trump administration's challenge to the 2010 law, which could result in its wholesale invalidation. Don't forget it, America. Don't forget what's happening here because it's a travesty, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said, and it will be an inerasable stain on this Republican majority forevermore. Senate Democrats have no procedural tools to stop Barrett's nomination from going forward, despite several acts of protest in the lead up to Sunday's vote. Democrats boycotted the Senate Judiciary Committee's vote to advance Barrett's nomination to the floor, and in a highly unusual move on Friday, they forced the Senate into a closed session for 20 minutes, the first time the Senate went into such a session in more than a decade. Democrats also raised illegitimate complaints on how Republican Senate leaders handled the Coney Barrett nomination. Due to their refusal to hold hearings on Merrick Garland in 2016 before the election, Republicans legitimately griped Democrats were perfectly fine with hearings for Garland before taking the opposite stance in 2020. Hypocrisy, thy names are Republicans and Democrats. The Obama and Trump administrations were well within their rights to nominate a Supreme Court justice before the 2016 and 2020 elections, respectively. Hearings should have happened on both, in my opinion, because there was no guarantee Garland would have been approved. Jonathan H. Adler of the Bulow conspiracy defended the Senate's decision to eschew hearings in 2016. The argument that the Senate has a constitutional obligation to act on a Supreme Court nomination is anything but clear. This claim finds no support in the relevant constitutional text, constitutional structure, or the history of judicial nominations. Now, while there are strong policy and prudential arguments that the Senate should promptly consider any and all nominations to legislatively authorize seats on the federal bench, and on the Supreme Court in particular, the argument that the Senate has some sort of constitutional obligation to take specific actions in response to a judicial nomination is erroneous. Interestingly enough, the argument that the Senate has an obligation to consider judicial nominations is not new. In the face of a Senate intransigence on some of his judicial nominees, President George W. Bush declared that the Senate has a constitutional obligation to vote up or down on the president's judicial nominees. The argument was wrong then, and it is wrong now. Adler also noted this year the number of justices who have been confirmed to their positions despite the White House and Senate being in opposite parties, including Clarence Thomas, Anthony Kennedy, and David Souter. Something worth noting with Coney Barrett about to head to the Supreme Court. Two things of note regarding today's vote in the Senate. Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski voted against opening debate. The latter still plans to vote for Coney Barrett for SCOTUS, while Collins, who may or may not win re-election, will not support the nomination. Politics, always politics. Get your popcorn ready. And that's totally true. You know, it is time to get the popcorn ready, and who knows what's going to happen, but things are going to get real within 8 days of the election. And now one interesting thing about Amy Coney Barrett is that there's a virtue of self-government. Got this from the Dispatch, and this from me, Andy Smerick. Amy Coney Barrett and the virtue of self-government. The final Senate vote on the confirmation of Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the U.S. Supreme Court is today. We should put aside, even for just a moment, discussions about what this means for the judicial nomination process, the filibuster, and the election. It's worth noting how a Justice Barrett would influence American policy making. The reason I'm so strongly in favor of a confirmation is because, based on her testimony and previous work, Barrett may very well help restore key aspects of American governing. I believe the most pressing problem in policymaking today, and the issue at the root of much of our political dysfunction, is that we've forsaken self-government, rule of, by, and for the people. Our Constitution creates a republic, a nation where the federal government and state governments are run by officials elected by our citizens. Various provisions, like the separation of powers, slow the policy making so that reasoned, stable majorities rule instead of rash, temporary factions. And individual rights and enumerated powers set limits on what government can do. Otherwise, our representatives, constantly subject to democratic dismissal from office, are empowered to decide what statutes and ordinances are passed, how dollars are spent, and so on. Self-government is indispensable, especially in a diverse nation of free-thinking people. It gives individuals a sense of agency in public life. It allows different communities to live differently based on their particular histories and priorities. Now, since self-rule makes us masters of our own fates, our energies are directed to real problems and practical solutions, rather than instead of abstract concepts and conspiracy theories about distant, invisible forces. This deliberative democratic process also makes us better citizens by fostering civic virtues like public participation, civility, accommodation, and compromise. The article goes on to say, because it's a little too long, that America must recover the connected beliefs that the most important societal decisions should be made by the people, not decentralized decision making enables American pluralism to work, and that our Constitution assigns lawmaking, and therefore politics, to the legislative branch. Only then can citizens and their communities feel like they're in control. Only then can policy disagreements be resolved through public deliberation and compromise. And only then can we diminish the role of the courts in public life and return to civil Supreme Court confirmations. And it's a long article, so I'll just stop it right there. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, and like I say, we only have about 2 hours to go until the about 2 hours 15 minutes until the nomination. So who knows what might happen. I will give you the results tomorrow, so stay tuned. With just inside 7 days until the election, last night we had Amy Coney Barrett being confirmed as the next Justice of the Supreme Court. And we have this from the Daily Signal. Amy Coney Barrett joined Supreme Court after 52-48 Senate vote. Amy Coney Barrett, fresh from a Senate confirmation vote, was sworn in Monday night as the Supreme Court's newest justice at an outdoor ceremony at the White House. The Senate, in a roll call that began just before 8 p.m., voted 52-48, mostly along party lines, to confirm Barrett as President Donald Trump's third nominee to the High Court. Senator Charles Grassley, Republican, Iowa, read off the vote tally and announced the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed. Republicans in the Senate chamber rose to their feet in applause. Barrett, a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit since 2017, fills a vacancy left by the September 18 death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. A conservative, she takes an originalist view of the Constitution in contrast to Ginsburg, a liberal icon. Justice Clarence Thomas officiated as Barrett took the oath of office at the White House at 9:15 p.m. Thomas was a friend of the late Justice Antonin Scalia, for whom Barrett worked as a law clerk and who she considers her mentor. She's one of our nation's most brilliant legal scholars. She will make an outstanding justice on the highest court in our land, Trump said before Thomas swore in Barrett. The American people have been profoundly impressed to learn of her achievements, her compassion, her generosity, her faith, and her sterling character, the president added. Justice Barrett made clear she will issue rulings based on her faithful reading of the law and the Constitution as written, not legislation from the bench. After the swearing in, Barrett spoke briefly about how the confirmation process reflected her views about the differences between the government's legislative and judicial branches. It is the job of a senator to pursue her policy preferences. In fact, it would be a dereliction of duty for her to put policy goals aside. By contrast, it is the job of a judge to resist her policy preferences, Barrett said, adding, it would be a dereliction of duty for her to give in to them. Federal judges don't stand for election, thus they have no basis for claiming that their preferences reflect those of the people. The separation of duty from political preferences is what makes the judiciary distinct from the three branches of government. A judge declares independence not only from Congress and the president, but also from the private beliefs that might otherwise move her. The judicial oath captures the essence of the judicial duty. The rule of law must always control. The White House planned to be considerably more careful in staging the swearing ceremony than it was for the September 26th event where Trump nominated Barrett. Democrats tagged the earlier event as a super spreader of COVID-19. The President and First Lady Melania Trump were among those in attendance, who later tested positive for the disease caused by the new coronavirus. In joining the High Court, Barrett strengthens its conservative wing to 6 judges, or justices, in contrast to a liberal wing of 3 justices. Senator Susan Collins, Republican Maine, in a tough re-election race, was the only Republican to vote with Democrats to oppose Barrett's confirmation. Collins said she wanted to be consistent with her 2016 position of opposing a vote on President Barack Obama's nomination of D.C. Circuit Judge Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court. At the time, Senate Republicans declined to hold hearings or vote on Obama's pick. 8 months before that year's presidential election, Senator Lisa Murkowski, Republican Alaska, opposed the process of considering Barrett, arguing Senate Republicans should be consistent with the earlier stand. However, Murkowski voted for Barrett because, she said, she did not oppose the nominee, only the process. The Senate Judiciary Committee voted Thursday to advance Barrett's nomination to the full Senate. Judiciary Chairman Lindsey Graham, the Republican South Carolina, and Ranking Member Senator Dianne Feinstein, Democrat California, remarked how civil the 4 days of hearings were. However, every Democrat on the committee boycotted the vote, allowing Barrett to win a unanimous vote only from Republicans who, while were present, Democrats attempted to use a filibuster Sunday to block a vote on Monday through a procedural maneuver. Barrett, besides being a Seventh Circuit judge, has been a law professor at Notre Dame University, where she got her law degree and graduated first in her class in 1997. Senator Todd Young, Republican Indiana, said Barrett's home state was proud on this day. In a speech on the Senate floor, Young said, "She will be the fifth woman and the first mother of school-aged children to serve as a Supreme Court justice. She will also be the only current justice to have received a law degree from an esteemed law school other than Harvard or Yale. I will tell you who is just extremely proud of her, Judge Amy Coney Barrett, and the trail she has blazed for others. Despite Senate Democrats' repeated attempt to drag her into the political fray, Judge Barrett has proven she will make her decisions based on the law rather than politics. As a fellow Hoosier, I've had the privilege of getting to know Judge Barrett and her family over the last several years, since she was nominated to fill a vacancy on the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit." Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat New York, called the Senate confirmation vote on Barrett one of the darkest days in the 231-year history of the United States Senate. Let the record show that tonight the Republican Senate majority has decided to thwart the will of the people and confirm a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court in the middle of a presidential election after more than 60 million Americans have voted, Schumer said, adding, "Let the record show that tonight the Republican majority will break 231 years of precedent and become the first majority to confirm a Supreme Court justice this close to Election Day. Let the record show tonight the Republican Party will make a mockery of its own stated principle that the American people deserve a voice in the selection of Supreme Court justices, completing the partisan theft of 2 seats on the Supreme Court using completely contradictory rationales." Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican Kentucky, has been praised by conservatives for shepherding to confirmation more than 200 Trump nominees for federal judgeships, including Supreme Court Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh before Barrett. By any objective standard, Judge Barrett deserves to be on the Supreme Court, McConnell said. Senator Mitt Romney, Republican in Utah, who sometimes votes with Democrats, came to the floor early in the day to speak up for Barrett's confirmation. "She's exceptionally intelligent, academically astute, and impeccably credentialed," Romney said. Romney cited Barrett's credentials bring great respect to the Supreme Court as an institution, noting a growing lack of trust among Americans in the elected branches of government, both parties, law enforcement, and the media. "It's essential that the Supreme Court retain the trust of the nation," Romney said. "That's why Judge Barrett's integrity, wisdom, and commitment to the rule of law is so important. May God bless her and her family as they begin this chapter of service for our nation." However, Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat of Oregon, faulted the process and Barrett for not answering enough questions on how she might vote on cases that go before the High Court. If the cure to vote to COVID-19 was partisanship and rule breaking, the Senate Republicans might be onto something with their low stun on the High Court. Wyden said on the Senate floor, adding, "Amy Coney Barrett may have established herself as a Babe Ruth of saying pretty much nothing. Now everybody pretty much understands that nominees typically clam up during these hearings. I don't expect Judge Barrett to disavow Trump healthcare policy. I wouldn't expect to agree with all of the Trump nominees' positions. But unfortunately for our country, this hearing was a new low." I've listened to a little bit of it, and I gotta tell you, it was not a new low as Wyden mentioned. Rather, it is basically a step toward rationalism, as I've been saying. You know, the election being next Tuesday. If it goes longer, in other words, if we don't get an exact winner on November 3rd, it might take it all the way up to the Supreme Court. In which case we would need 9 justices, because any 4-4 ruling means that the lower court's ruling sticks. So 5-4 just breaks that. And my good friend Becca Lower had written over on Red State about Associate Justice Barrett making remarks after the White House oath ceremony. It's happening as my colleague Jennifer Van Laar wrote a short while ago. The United States Senate confirmed this evening Amy Coney Barrett of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit to fill the Supreme Court of the United States left vacant by the passing of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg just over a month ago. With her husband Jesse and a small group of seated guests on the south lawn of the White House looking on, Barrett became only the fifth woman in history to be seated on the Supreme Court. There's a pic from Caitlin Collins showing the scene for the swearing-in of Amy Coney Barrett on the South Lawn. In what appeared to be a purposeful demonstration of President Trump's and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's strength in staying the course on Barrett's confirmation process, despite intense political pressures from the legacy media and Democrats in Congress, the ceremony's announcer stated that President Trump was accompanied by Justice Thomas and Amy Coney Barrett. Ted Cruz was at the White House, and he tweeted out a picture as well. In his remarks before the ceremony, the president told the assembled audience and Americans looking on via televisions and computer screens in part, "It is highly fitting that Justice Barrett fills the seat of a true pioneer for women," Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Trump continued. "Tonight, Justice Barrett becomes not only the fifth woman to serve on our nation's highest court, but the very first mother of school-aged children to become a Supreme Court justice. Very important. The March of Liberty that began with the American Revolution continues onward this evening. Tonight at the White House, we carry forward the cause of freedom, equality, and justice, for which so many generations of Americans have given so much. I want every American child watching to understand you live in a land where everything is possible and every dream can come true. Your sacred rights can never be taken away. Judge Barrett, as you take your oath tonight, the legacy of our ancestors falls to you. The American people put their trust in you and their faith in you as you take up the task of defending our laws, our Constitution, and this country that we all love." That from Digital Soldier. And it says, the newest Associate Justice selected 72-year-old Associate Justice Clarence Thomas, long considered to be one of the stalwart Constitution textualists on the High Court, to deliver the oath of office. As Trump mentioned in his remarks, Thomas is the longest serving justice on the current court, but as Jennifer shared via Fox News earlier, Chief Justice John Roberts will conduct the swearing-in ceremony or judicial oath itself. Standing in front of Justice Clarence Thomas, donning a simple black dress with three-quarter length sleeves, Barrett swore the oath. Clarence Thomas officially swears in Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. In a tweet from Sean Davis, Justice Barrett is highly regarded by peers and former students alike, whether as a clerk to the late Justice Antonin Scalia or a law professor at Notre Dame University. In joining the High Court, as her mentee and friend pointed out in a recent two-part interview with Red State, Barrett will have the chance to live out her long dedication to the Constitution as it is written. And there's the oath of office, also known as a constitutional oath. After taking the oath, Barrett immediately stepped to the podium, thanking President Trump and the U.S. Senate, singling out both Leader McConnell and Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham. She also thanked White House staffers and the Department of Justice for their assistance through the confirmation process. In a show of humility that is shown through in the time Barrett has been in the public eye, she enthused about the support from people across the country through ways both tangible and intangible, who made this day possible. She continued, saying the oath lays out her judicial duty as a justice. Barrett says, from the Associated Press, Barrett says that it is the job of a judge to resist her policy preferences, claiming it would be a dereliction of duty to give in to them. Barrett is pledging to do her job independently of the political branches and of my own preferences. In conclusion, Echoing her remarks for the day she was chosen by the president as a nominee for this august office, she said, "I love the Constitution and the democratic republic that it establishes, and I will devote myself to preserving it." There's a video in the article so you can watch the remarks. And students for Trump tweeted out, "I love the Constitution and the democratic republic that it establishes, and I will devote myself to preserving it," from Amy Coney Barrett. Justice ACB has a good ring to it. Yes, it does. And no sooner had she been confirmed and sworn in that the Democrats are making demands to pack the courts, pack or expand the Supreme Court. This from the Washington Examiner. Ed Markey makes his court packing stance clear. We must expand the Supreme Court. Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey tweeted his support for expanding the Supreme Court, saying it must be done. We must expand the Supreme Court. Markey tweeted Monday, "The Senate Democrat has previously said that he would vote to expand the court if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed to the Supreme Court. It portends to be one of the most consequential nominations in the history of the United States. I will do everything in my power to block the nomination being confirmed of Amy Coney Barrett," Markey said at the end of September. "If the Republicans are successful in jamming it through, I will vote next year to end the filibuster so we can expand the Supreme Court to get back the seats which have been stolen by the Republicans over the last 4 years." Senate Republicans voted Sunday to advance Barrett through the final stages of the confirmation process. She's expected to be sworn in later Monday, with President Trump saying the White House is preparing for a very nice event. "We're going to see an event probably at the White House later on this evening," Trump said. The question of court packing has become a focal point of the 2020 election cycle after Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death and Barrett's nomination. The press has repeatedly asked Joe Biden where he stands on the issue, with the former vice president repeatedly dodging the question. He said last week, however, he would establish a commission to help decide how to reform the court system. "If elected, what I'll do is I'll put together a national commission, bipartisan commission of scholars, constitutional scholars, Democrats, Republicans, liberal, conservative," Biden said during a 60 Minutes interview, "and I'll ask them to, over 180 days, come back to me with recommendations on how to reform the court system because it's getting out of whack the way it has been handled. And it's not about court packing. There's a number of other things that our constitutional scholars have debated, and I've looked to see what recommendations that commission might make," he added. Biden has also previously said he doesn't like the idea of court packing, but that it depends on how much they rush Barrett's confirmation. And there's this article from Mary Chastain from Legal Insurrection. "Expand the court, Democrats and the left lose their minds over Barrett's confirmation." Kamala Harris believes the Republicans have just done great harm to the American people by confirming Barrett. Remember, the left swore they would burn it all to the ground if President Donald Trump even thought about replacing Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Be careful out there tonight, as the entire blanking thing is apparently going to be burned down, from Glenn Greenwald. But now we have Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Let's kick things off with failed Democrat presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. "Happy birthday," this from Mary Chastain. Remember, and there's a picture there. Remember how when they accused Trump of court packing? Well, now they want to expand the court. Someone informed these poor ignorant souls that expanding the court is court packing. "Oh wait, it's okay if they do it. Expand the court," in a tweet from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. "Abolish the filibuster, expand the court, abolish the Electoral College," from Laura Bassett. "We're going to take back the White House and Senate next week with a resounding mandate from the people to fight back against Trump's illegitimately stacked judiciary. We must expand the court if we're serious about the transformational change that people are crying for." Tweet from Rashida Tlaib. "Expand the court," from Patton Oswalt. Here are some more thoughts from those who want to twist words and give meanings that fit their agenda because Orange Man bad. How jarring to hear just Amy Coney Barrett discuss a rigorous confirmation process. Given the lightning fast 1 month from nomination to confirmation, the Senate Republicans pushed through in order to make sure she was confirmed just days before the election. From Susan Glasser, Just Dweck tweeted out, look, you may not agree with Amy Coney Barrett's extreme views, but at least she's also unqualified. Stephen Greenhouse tweeted out, every single second that Justice Barrett stands next to Donald Trump beaming as part of a Trump political spectacle is an additional argument that she should absolutely recuse herself from any Supreme Court case involving the presidential campaign. Today, Republicans tweeted the will of the American majority by confirming a Supreme Court justice through an illegitimate process, all in their effort to gut the Affordable Care Act and strip health care from millions of pre-existing conditions. We won't forget this, from Kamala Harris. And from Randy Mayhem Singer, may Amy Coney coat hanger Barrett never have a moment's peace or respect the rest of her life. May your days on SCOTUS be short. May she forever be haunted by women who die in back alley abortions and people who die from lack of health care. May the pain of the born be her hell. Daisy Prado said, I am literally crying about the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation while on a Zoom training call for a Biden phone bank marathon. This is what our democracy has dwindled to. Harry Kunzru tweeted out, if you want to know how my evening is going, I just accidentally ate a chocolate cookie covered in ants as I sat absentmindedly spinning out about the ways Barrett could help steal the election. Kamala Harris tweeted again, saying, my Senate Republican colleagues have just done great harm to the American people by confirming Justice Barrett or Judge Barrett to the U.S. Supreme Court. There is no question about that. Speaker Pelosi said President Trump and Senate Republicans have committed an act of supreme desperation, jamming through a Supreme Court nominee just 8 days before Election Day as part of their years-long campaign to destroy health care. And of course, we can't forget, and of course, please don't forget, and of course, Board Boogie Bianca said, please don't forget to blame Susan Sarandon. I just want to remind you that Susan Sarandon convinced young leftists to vote against Hillary. That's how we got the dead-eyed woman, Amy Coney Barrett, Kavanaugh and Gorsuch. Heidi Ann Morse tweeted out, is the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett a setback? Yes. Is it determinative of the future of millions of Americans? Frankly, no. I think this reminds us that apathy is not an option, that corruption requires resistance, that our rights must be fought for and never assumed. And Dean Obadala tweeted out, Amy Coney Barrett will do all she can to keep Trump in power if given the chance. Let's not give her or the other GOPers on the court that chance. Vote, vote, vote. If we win big, they cannot steal the election. Highly unlikely, especially considering the fact that, well, so far we've had about 60 million ballots cast so far, far surpassing 2016 at this time. I'll get into that probably tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, here we are sitting 7 days, 5 hours until the polls close in California. So things are really about to hit the fan, and I'll be here to break it all down for you. We're sitting at just inside 6 days until the election, and already there's controversy among one of the candidates, possibly a last minute. Got this article from justthenews.com. Biden family scandals, 7 uncomfortable realities confronting the Democrat nominee. Democrat presidential nominee Joe Biden has offered short, at times halting defenses of his son Hunter's business deals in recent weeks after months of ignoring an increasingly clear narrative of a family member pursuing lucrative business deals in the shadows of his vice presidency. Not one solitary thing was out of line, Biden said last Thursday when the questions about his son's business dealings came up at the last presidential debate. Not a single thing. My son has not made money in terms of this thing. About what you were talking about, China, Biden said. I have not had. The only guy that's made money from China is this guy, he added, pointing to Donald Trump. Other times he and his defenders have rebuffed questions about the family business as a smear job or Russian disinformation. But Biden's campaign hasn't disputed much of the evidence that has become public, instead declaring it doesn't matter because no crimes have been proven. Investigations by the press during impeachment, and even by two Republican-led Senate committees whose work was decried as not legitimate and political by a GOP colleague, have all reached the same conclusion that Joe Biden carried out official U.S. policy toward Ukraine and engaged in no wrongdoing, a campaign spokesman said recently. But criminality isn't the only standard by which Americans evaluate their leaders. Judgment, ethics, and transparency are also essential attributes. On such, the Biden campaign has not yet explained or confronted these 7 uncomfortable realities, many which have emerged not from Russian disinformation, but rather from former associates of Hunter Biden and former government subordinates of the Vice President. Number 1, appearance of a conflict of interest. Joe Biden's claim that not one single solitary thing was out of line is contradicted by the facts. Multiple State Department officials, including Biden's former ambassador and deputy chief of mission in Kiev, have testified they believe the vice president created the appearance of a conflict of interest by continuing to oversee anti-corruption policy in Ukraine, while his son served on the board of a company called Burisma Holdings that was under corruption investigation. The officials also said that the Biden family behavior in Ukraine undercut U.S. efforts to fight endemic corruption in Ukraine. The concerns were captured in one email written by U.S. Deputy Chief of Mission George Kent in September 2016. The presence of Hunter Biden on the Burisma board was very awkward for all U.S. officials, pushing an anti-corruption agenda in Ukraine, he wrote. In separate testimony, Kent revealed that he raised his concerns directly with Joe Biden's office but got rebuffed. I said that I had learned that Hunter Biden had been appointed to a board of this company, that I had just raised U.S. concerns about the owner of the company, who we believed had been engaged in money laundering, Kent told senators earlier this year. The bottom line, he added, was I said I believe this creates the perception of a potential conflict of interest, given Vice President Biden's role and his very strong advocacy for anti-corruption action. And I thought that someone needed to talk to Hunter Biden, and then he should step down from the board of Burisma. Number 2, U.S. concerns about bribery on Hunter Biden's watch in Burisma. Documents released under the under the Freedom of Information Act show U.S. officials twice raised concerns that Burisma made bribery payments to Ukrainian officials in 2015 and 2016 in an effort to get criminal investigations against the firm and its owner shut down. Both allegedly occurred while Hunter Biden served on the board, and at least one instance involving a $7 million bribe payment was reported to the FBI. Number 3, Joe Biden's claim he did not discuss his son's business contradicted by public evidence. There are at least 3 instances where there is now public evidence that Joe Biden met with foreigners his son was courting for business. The first occurred in 2011 when Obama White House entry logs shows several Chinese businessmen involved with Hunter Biden checked in to meet with the vice president. The second occurred in 2013 when Hunter Biden rode aboard Air Force 2 with his father and then introduced the vice president in Beijing to a Chinese businessman that was helping him start an investment fund. The third, alleged in an email purportedly recovered from Hunter Biden's old laptop, indicates Hunter Biden arranged for an official from Burisma to meet his father in April 2015. After some initial denials and efforts to discredit that laptop, the Biden campaign now acknowledges the encounter may have happened, though insists there was speeding. And on Tuesday night, former Biden family business associate Tony Bobulinski revealed he met with Biden on 2 separate occasions to discuss prospective ventures in the Chinese markets. They knew exactly what they were doing, he said. They were dealing with a Chinese-owned enterprise that had strong financial support and political support from the Chinese Communist Party. That's how it was presented to me. That's not my own words. That's how they presented it to me and read me in on it, he told Fox News host Tucker Carlson. Number 4, evidence suggesting Joe Biden had a secret stake in Hunter Biden's business world. At least 2 pieces of evidence have emerged in the last 2 weeks that suggest Hunter Biden believed his father was getting a cut of his business. The first, which remains uncorroborated by just the news, is an email found on the purported Hunter Biden laptop in which the vice president's son suggests he shared half of his income with his father. The second piece of evidence, now authenticated by Just the News, is a proposal in May 2017 for a joint venture between a Chinese energy firm and a Hunter Biden-tied country called Sinohawk Holdings that stated that 10% of the venture's equity was being reserved for the big guy. Sinohawk CEO Tony Bobulinski has confirmed that the reference to the big guy is Joe Biden, and that the then former vice president was supposed to be a silent investor in the venture. Number 5, the videotaped confession Joe Biden made about strong-arming Ukraine to fire its chief prosecutor. The debate over Joe Biden's decision to force the firing of Ukrainian Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin in March 2016 was at the heart of last year's impeachment inquiry. But a year later, while President Trump has been acquitted, the questions about Joe Biden's conduct remain unanswered. It is not in doubt that Biden, as Vice President and Chief U.S. policymaker for Ukraine, used the threat of withholding $1 billion in U.S. aid to Kiev in early 2016 to force the country to fire Shokin. It also is not in doubt that Biden was aware that Shokin's office was investigating Burisma at the time he took the action, and evidence that has emerged since impeachment made it clear that Shokin's probe into Burisma was active and expanding with court orders, referrals, and a plan to summon Hunter Biden for questioning. Biden says other U.S. officials and European allies wanted Shokin fired, but during recent state testimonies, State Department officials couldn't give specific examples of corruption or an aptitude that warranted ousting Shokin after he'd been on the job just a year. State officials could not produce any evidence that Shokin was told he was doing a bad job before he was ousted. Joe Biden deserves the benefit of the doubt until otherwise proven wrong, but the State Department should at least provide evidence showing the specific wrongdoing, concerns of or performance failures that warranted Shokin's dramatic ouster, and why the Vice President had to be involved. Barring such evidence, the questions of a conflict of interest involving the Bidens will forever linger over the episode. Number 6, a Democrat firm's relentless pressure on behalf of Hunter Biden's Ukraine gas firm. The portrait of Joe Biden's ouster of the Ukrainian prosecutor is further complicated by a growing body of evidence that Burisma Holdings and its American lobbying shop, the Democrat firm known as Blue Star Strategies, relentlessly pursued senior Obama Biden State Department officials in Washington and at the Kiev embassy to help end the corruption investigations plaguing the gas firm. Hunter Biden's role on the company was repeatedly cited by state officials as the pressure campaign persisted throughout the 2016 election. Blue Star and an American criminal defense lawyer successfully settled the Ukrainian corruption probe just days before Donald Trump took office, eliminating the threat of prosecution against Burisma. The question that remains is what, if anything, did Obama administration officials do to facilitate the final outcome? Number 7, the national security question. Did flagged suspicious financial transactions compromise a political family? While much of the attention in Burisma has been on the ethics issues around Hunter Biden making money and the vapor trail of his father's foreign policy jet setting, a bigger question has emerged. Did foreign adversaries or frenemies in China, Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan try to compromise the Biden family with financial deals and suspicious money? A Senate report last month contained a bombshell revelation that the U.S. Treasury Department flagged many transactions flowing through the accounts of Hunter Biden-connected firms as suspicious, including transactions involving a Russian oligarch, a Ukrainian oligarch, and Chinese officials tied to the communist government and military. In addition, a Hunter Biden-tied firm successfully facilitated the sale of a Russian auto parts manufacturer called henages to China's military aircraft maker, even though the company had protected dual-use technology essential to U.S. fighter jets. The question raised by the Senate that lingers over all these revelations is whether U.S. intelligence or the FBI explored the national security implications of these activities, including whether any foreign adversary tried to use the Biden family enterprises to launder money, a common tactic for compromising Americans. This question became even more pronounced after it was reported last week that a grand jury subpoena that was used by the FBI to seize a purported Hunter Biden laptop listed money laundering as a possible investigative focus. Now, this is something that the big media, or the old media, as Andrew Barrett calls it, doesn't want anyone to find out, but, it's there. And there's even more coming out. And as a matter of fact, got this from Legal Insurrection. Tony Bobulinski, Joe Biden compromised candidate who lied about involvement in deal with CCP-connected company. The family arrangement was set up to provide plausible deniability to Joe. Tony Bobulinski just appeared on a 45-minute interview on Tucker Carlson tonight. Bobulinski was involved in helping set up a deal with the company, CEFC China Energy Conglomerate, connected to the Chinese Communist Party through Joe Biden's son and brother. Bobulinski met twice with Joe himself, but the others were interposed as go-between to supervise Joe with plausible deniability should it become an issue in a future presidential run. The tale is a little complicated because of all the players involved, but at its essence, Joe Biden's brother and son worked the deal, got Bobulinski involved to run it, used the Biden family name and status as the lure for the Chinese, and Joe knew what was going on despite his denials. Bobulinski said he was particularly incensed and decided to come forward for the interview after Adam Schiff and then Joe Biden himself claimed it was part of a broader Russian disinformation campaign. A tape was played of Rob Walker, a representative of the Biden interests and the spouse of Jill Biden's former top personal White House aide, telling Bobulinski, "You're going to be with all of us, man." He suggested that the share in the deal for James Biden, the brother of Joe, went from 10 to 20% after it was mentioned that 10% was held for the big guy, Joe. Here are some key clips. We will post the full interview at the bottom of this post when available. A couple of tweets. One tweet from TV News HQ. Tony Bobulinski tells Hunter Carlson it is a blatant lie when Joe Biden says he had no knowledge of his son's business dealings. From Trump War Room. The Biden camp is smearing Navy veteran Tony Bobulinski's evidence as Russian disinformation because he blew the whistle on their secret business deals with the Chinese. Another one from Trump War Room. Watch Biden family whistleblower Tony Bobulinski says Joe Biden is lying about his family's foreign business deals and plan to hide behind plausible deniability. From the Daily Caller, a voicemail is aired showing that Rob Walker, the spouse of Jill Biden's former top personal White House aide, told Bobulinski, "You're just gonna bury all of us, man." When he learned he would go on record with the facts. Chris Houck, Bobulinski to Tucker, I want to simplify this for the American people as much as I can. In that email, James Giller goes through intimate detail of what each individual's requests were from a compensation perspective and how the equity in the enterprise would be divvied up. And there's a full video which is in the article that I'll drop in the description beneath this. But yeah, I mean, I mean, all throughout history, there have been scandals against candidates and even presidents, but this is something that is coming out, and with 60 million early and mail-in votes already in, it may not matter to them, but there are some early early voting in states from now up until Sunday, so that might play a part in it. Also might play a part in what's gonna come up on Tuesday with the election day. But let's read this from Conservative Daily News. Hunter's ex-business partner, Joe Biden, and the Biden family are compromised. Hunter Biden's ex-business partner, Tony Bobulinski, told Fox News host Tucker Carlson on Tuesday that Democrat presidential nominee Joe Biden will be compromised as president because of his family's business dealings with Russia. I think Joe Biden and the Biden family are compromised, Bobulinski said. I just don't see, given the history here and the facts, how Joe can't be influenced in some manner based on the history that they have, Bobulinski said. So as a citizen and an American taxpayer, I'm very, very concerned. Bobulinski explained how he met with Joe Biden in Los Angeles on May 2nd, 2017, as a request of Hunter and his uncle Jim Biden to discuss the Biden family dealings at high level. They were sort of wining and dining me and presenting the strength of the Biden family to get me more engaged and want to take on the CEO role of the joint business venture between the Chinese energy firm CEFC, China Energy Company, and Oneida Holdings, a Delaware-based LLC. Bobulinski said it was crystal clear that Hunter Biden had brought his father up to speed on the status of a joint venture deal before he met with the former vice president. They were putting their entire family legacy on the line. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were dealing with a Chinese-owned enterprise that has strong financial support and political support from the Chinese Communist Party. That's how it was presented to me. That's not my own words. That's how they presented it to me and read me in on it, Bobulinski said. Bobulinski recalled bringing up his concerns with Jim Biden the following day after his meeting with the former vice president that their business dealings with the Chinese could impact his brother's 2020 presidential aspirations. I know Joe decided not to run in 2016, but what if he ran in the future? Aren't they taking political risk or headline risk? And I remember looking at Jim Biden and saying, how are you guys getting away with this? Like, aren't you concerned? And he certainly looked at me and he laughed a little and said, plausible deniability, Bobulinski said. Later that day, Bobulinski described a second meeting he had with Joe Biden in a parking lot in which the former vice president told him to keep an eye on his son and brother. Joe Biden is not named in any corporate documents for Oneida, despite a much publicized May 13, 2017 email Bobulinski received from Hunter Biden associate James Gillier, saying that 10% of the firm will be held by H for the big guy. Bobulinski said the big guy in the email is a reference to Joe Biden. Jim Biden was granted a 20% stake in Oneida when the deal was finalized on May 22, 2017, up from his 10% stake in Gillier's May 13th email, according to documents obtained by the Daily Caller News Foundation and other media outlets. Bobulinski said he did not know why Jim Biden's ownership in the firm went from 10% as proposed in Gillier's email to 20% when the deal was ultimately finalized. I'm sure there were discussions with the Biden family. I wasn't privy to that discussion, but this is Jim Biden, the brother of the potential future president of the United States. It's not a distant cousin, it's not an employee, it's his brother who in documents defines himself as a political advisor to his brother. Just during negotiations over the structure of Oneida, Hunter Biden texted Bobulinski saying both James and my chairman gave an emphatic no. Walensky said Hunter Biden was referring to his father when he said, "My chairman," in the May 19, 2017 text, which is right down here. And what Hunter's referencing here is that he spoke with his father, and his father is giving an emphatic note to the ask that I had, which was putting proper governance in place on Onada Holdings, Bobulinski said. To the Chinese involved in the deal, Bobulinski said, "It was always the Biden family, who is obviously led and operated by Joe Biden." Now, like I said a few minutes ago, it'll be interesting to see with this coming out just how it'll play out over the next almost 5 days. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I know I have my vote in. I know many have their votes already in. But next 5 days are crazy, so get the popcorn, get ready if you like it, just get everything all situated, because in about a week from now, things are going to get real hairy, one way or another. The Senate is in session until November 9th, which is after the election. However, yesterday there was a hearing on technology and bias with the big tech giants, Facebook, Twitter, and Google. And there were many takeaways from there, but here are 4 big ones from the dailysignal.com. It says 4 big takeaways from Senate hearing on tech bias. The CEOs of Twitter, Facebook, and Google defended themselves Wednesday on Capitol Hill from charges of political bias in how they share news and other information. They testified before a Senate committee roughly a week after Twitter and Facebook suppressed a New York Post expose on the lucrative foreign business dealings of Hunter Biden, Senate former Vice President Joe Biden. But the hearing went well beyond the Post coverage 2 weeks ago of the files contained in a laptop computer reportedly belonging to Hunter Biden, delving into what Republicans called a consistent double standard and blocking content on the digital platforms. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey, Google CEO Sundar Pichai, and Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg testified under oath before the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. The 3 agreed to appear voluntarily and remotely to avoid a subpoena during what has become a hot issue this election year. Several Republicans have talked about revoking the protection from litigation that social media platforms enjoy under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. The provision exempts the companies from being sued for published content they didn't originate, such as the New York Post coverage of the Hunter Biden scandal. If the companies are blocking or suppressing online content based on political leaning, some lawmakers have argued, they are functionally publishers and not neutral platforms and can be exposed to the same defamation laws as news organizations such as the Post. Section 230 should be carefully refined to fit the law's original intent but not scrapped, even as social media giants and other tech firms have squandered the public's trust, contends Con Kitchen, director of the Center for Technology Policy at the Heritage Foundation, in a report published Tuesday. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act has been critical to the development of today's internet and internet services, the report summary states, adding, but the expanding presence of those services in the lives of Americans and a growing political distrust of the companies providing these services highlight the need to refine the scope and language of Section 230 to better fit the statute's original intent and to assuage these concerns. Such refinement is the best way to fan the flames of economic freedom and creativity while protecting individual and corporate freedom of speech. Here are 4 key takeaways from the Senate committee's hearing on the perceived bias of tech firms such as Facebook, Google, and Twitter. Number one, just one example? Senator Mike Lee, a Republican of Utah, noted several cases in which digital platforms put restrictions on conservative politicians and media outlets and pressed the CEOs to name one example of a liberal individual or entity that got the same scrutiny. Only Google's CEO is able to give a specific answer. I see these quotes where each of you tell consumers about your business practices, that you seem to do the opposite and take censorship-related actions against the president, against members of his administration, against the New York Post, the Babylon Bee, the Federalist, pro-life groups, and there are countless other examples, as Lee said. The Utah Republican clarified what he meant. When I use the word censor, I mean block content, fact check, or label content, or demonetize websites of conservative, Republican, or pro-life individuals or groups of companies contradicting your commercial policies, Lee said. But I don't see this suppression from high-profile liberal commentators. Facebook's Zuckerberg says examples exist, but he just couldn't think of any. There are certainly many examples that your Democrat colleagues will object to when a fact checker might label something as false that they disagree with, Zuckerberg said. Lee responded, I get that. I'm just asking you to name one high-profile liberal person or company who you have censored. One name, Zuckerberg said. I need to think about it and get you a list. Dorsey of Twitter responded, we can give a more exhaustive list. Lee reiterated, I'm not asking for an exhaustive list, just one example, one entity, anyone. Twitter's Dorsey said, 2 Democratic Congresspeople. I'll get those names to you. By contrast, Google's Pichai seemed prepared for the question. We have turned down ads from Priorities USA, from Vice President Biden's campaign, the Google chief said. We have had compliance issues with World Socialist Review, which is a left-leaning publication. We can give you several examples. We have a violent graphic content policy. By the way, World Socialist Review apparently was last published in 2011. Lee said the tech companies have the right to set their own terms of service. But given the disparate impact of who gets censored on your platforms, it seems that one, you are to enforce your terms of service equally, and two, you're writing your standards to target conservative viewpoints, Lee said. Number two, who elected you? Senator Ted Cruz, Republican Texas, didn't mince words, declaring, the 3 witnesses we have before this committee collectively pose, I believe, the single greatest threat to free speech in America and the greatest threat we have to our free and fair elections. Cruz jumped into the example of the New York Post explosive October 14 story on Hunter Biden. Twitter blocked the Post Twitter account after the newspaper posted the story and prevented Twitter users from sharing it. Twitter also blocked the account of a political reporter who tweeted the story until he removed it from his feed, a Texas Republican said. You force a political reporter to take down his post about the New York Post as well. Is that correct, Cruz asked? Dorsey said the company changed its policy on the story. Within that 24-hour period, yes, but as the policy has changed, Dorsey said. Dorsey said if the New York Post deleted the story, it would have the account back and would be free to repost the story. So Cruz responded by talking about the power of Twitter's platform. So Twitter can censor Politico, you can censor the New York Post, presumably you can censor the New York Times or any other media outlet. Mr. Dorsey, who the hell elected you and put you in charge of what the media are allowed to report and what the American people are allowed to hear? And why do you persist in behaving as a Democrat super PAC, silencing views to the contrary of your political beliefs? Dorsey defended his policy, stating it plans to publish the process for content moderation and provide greater transparency to gain public trust. We're not doing that, censoring the media. That is why I opened this hearing with calls for more transparency, Dorsey said. We realize we need to earn trust more. We realize that more accountability is needed to show our intentions and to show the outcomes. So I hear the concerns and acknowledge them, but we want to fix it with more transparency. Number 3, sticking up for tech giants. Democrat senators on the committee generally denied any anti-conservative bias on social media, and in some cases said there should be more censorship. Senator Brian Schatz, Democrat Hawaii, went a step further than colleagues by casting the three CEOs as victims who were being bullied by Republicans on the committee. We never do this, and there is good reason we do not haul people before us to yell at them for not doing our bidding during an election, Schatz said. It's a misuse of taxpayer dollars. Schatz added, what we're seeing here today is an attempt to bully CEOs of private companies into carrying out a hit job on a presidential candidate by making sure that they push out foreign and domestic misinformation meant to influence the election. To our witnesses today, you and other tech leaders need to stand up to this immoral behavior. The truth is that some of my colleagues accuse you, your companies, and your employees of being biased or liberal, that you have institutionally bent over backwards and overcompensated. You've hired Republican operatives, hosted private dinners with Republican leaders, and in contravention of your terms of service, given special dispensation to right-wing voices and even throttled progressive journalism. Schatz cited no examples of such throttle news sites. Number 4, tweets by Iran, China, and Trump. Committee Chairman Roger Wicker, Republican Mississippi, first called out Dorsey about a Chinese government official's tweet that the U.S. Army created COVID-19, the disease caused by the new coronavirus that originated in China. Wicker asked about a disclaimer that Twitter quickly attached to a Trump tweet about problems with mail-in ballots, in which Twitter claimed there is no security problem. Now, by contrast, when a Chinese official tweeted that the U.S. created COVID-19, it took 2 months for Twitter to add a similar disclaimer. How does a claim by a Chinese communist that the U.S. military is to blame for COVID remain up for 2 months without a fact check, and the president's tweet about the security of mail-in ballots gets labeled instantly? Twitter's Dorsey responded that he didn't know exactly how long the Chinese tweet on COVID-19 remained up, but said Twitter's gatekeepers decided that Trump's tweet on mail-in ballots would misinform the public. Wicker also asked about tweets from Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei that promised or advocated violence. These tweets are still up, Mr. Dorsey. How is it they're acceptable based on your policies at Twitter? Wicker asked. Dorsey responded, we believe it's important for everyone to hear from global leaders. We have policies among global leaders, the Twitter CEO continued. We want to make sure that we are respecting their rights to speak and to publish what they need. But if there's a violation of our terms of service, we want to label it. Wicker said they're still up. Do you violate your terms of service? Dorsey said, we did not find those to violate our terms of service because we consider them saber rattling, which is part of the speech of world leaders in concert with other countries. Later in the hearing, Senator Cory Gardner, Republican Colorado, expressed caution about making changes to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. I don't like the idea of unelected elites in San Francisco or Silicon Valley deciding whether my speech is permissible on their platforms, Gardner said, adding, but I like even less the idea of unelected Washington, D.C. bureaucrats trying to enforce some kind of political neutral content moderation. We have to be very careful and not rush to legislate in ways that stifle speech. You can delete Twitter, turn off Facebook, and ditch Google, but you cannot unsubscribe from government censors. Still, Gardner was tough on Dorsey, asking why the platform didn't delete tweets by the Iranian leader that denied the Holocaust, yet flagged tweets by Trump. It's strange to me that you flagged the tweets from the president, but haven't hidden the Ayatollah's tweets on Holocaust denial or calls to wipe Israel off the map. Dorsey said it's a different type of misinformation. We do have other policies around incitement to violence, Dorsey said. Some of the tweets that you mentioned are examples that might run afoul of that. Gardner said, so somebody who denies the Holocaust happened is not spreading misinformation? Dorsey said, it's misleading information, but we don't have a policy against that type of misleading information. Now, I caught just a glimpse of it, and I have to say, okay, I had not seen Jack Dorsey's face on Twitter or anywhere before, but I was with a group of people yesterday, and who probably had seen Dorsey's face around, and they said that he looks awfully ragged and rough looking, which, given what's been happening over the past couple of months, I might actually agree with that. And I mean, it's it's just interesting. And here we are, 5 days away from the election. You know, we have the social media CEOs coming in, rebuffing bias claims and vowing to defend the election. As this as this article rather, from the Associated Press brings out, under fire from President Donald Trump and his allies, the CEOs of Twitter, Facebook, and Google rebuffed accusations of anti-conservative bias at a Senate hearing Wednesday, and promised to aggressively defend their platforms from being used to sow chaos in next week's election. Lawmakers of both parties, eyeing their company's tremendous power to disseminate speech and ideas, are looking to challenge their long-enjoyed bedrock legal protections for online speech. The stated topic for the hearing, but one that was quickly overtaken by questions related to the presidential campaign. With worries over election security growing, senators on the Commerce Committee extracted promises from Twitter's Jack Dorsey, Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, and Google's Sundar Pichai that their companies will be on guard against meddling by foreign actors or the incitement of violence around their election results. Testifying via video, the executives said they are taking several steps, including partnerships with news organizations, to distribute accurate information about voting. Dorsey said Twitter was working closely with state election officials. We want to give the people using this service as much information as possible, he said. Republicans, led by Trump, have accused the social media platforms, without evidence, of deliberately suppressing conservative, religious, and anti-abortion views, and they say that behavior has reached new heights in the contest between the president and Democrat nominee Joe Biden. Senator Roger Wicker, Republican Mississippi, the committee's chairman, said at the start of the hearing that the laws governing free speech must be updated because the openness and freedom of the internet are under attack. Wicker cited a move this month by Facebook and Twitter to limit dissemination of an unverified political story from the conservative-leaning New York Post about Biden. The story, which was not confirmed by other publications, cited verified emails from Biden's son Hunter that were reportedly disclosed by Trump allies. Twitter's conduct is by far been the most egregious. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican Texas, told Dorsey. Cruz cited Twitter's limitations on the newspaper story as part of a pattern of censorship and silencing Americans with whom Twitter disagrees. Who the hell elected you and who put you in charge of what the media are allowed to report? Cruz asked. Dorsey told Cruz that he does not believe that Twitter can influence elections because it's only one source of information. He tried to steer senators away from conventional notions of political bias, noting that much of the content people see today is determined by algorithms. He endorsed a proposal from computer scientist Stephen Wolfram that would allow third parties to guide how artificial intelligence systems chose what postings people see. GOP senators raised with the executives an array of allegations of other bias on the platforms regarding Iran, China, and Holocaust denial. There is no evidence that the social media giants are biased against conservative news, posts, or other material, or that they favor one side of political debate over another, researchers have found, but Republicans are not alone in raising concerns about the company's policies. Democrats focus their criticism mainly on hate speech, misinformation, and other content which can incite violence, keep people from voting, or spread falsehoods about the coronavirus. They criticize the tech CEOs for failing to police content, blaming the platforms for playing a role in hate crimes, and the rise of white nationalism in the U.S. Amid the debate, the Trump administration has asked Congress to strip some of the protections that have generally shielded the tech companies from legal responsibility for what people post on their platforms. The proposals would make changes to a provision of a 1996 law that has been the foundation for unfettered speech on the topic, Critics in both parties say that immunity under Section 230 of the law enables the social media companies to advocate their responsibility to impartially moderate content. Trump chimed in on Wednesday with a tweet exhorting repeal Section 230. The CEOs argue that liability shield has helped make the internet what it is today. Though Zuckerberg says he believes that Congress should update the law to make sure it's working as intended, Dorsey and Pichai urged caution in making any changes, but the executives also rejected accusations of bias. We approach our work without political bias, full stop, Pichai said. To do otherwise would be contrary to both our business interests and our mission. The companies in recent years have wrestled with how strongly to intervene with speech. They have often gone out of their way not to repair bias against conservative views, a posture that they effectively tells them toward those viewpoints. The effort has been especially strained for Facebook, which was caught off guard in 2016 when it was used as a conduit by Russian agents to spread misinformation benefiting Trump's presidential campaign. Wednesday's session lacked the in-person drama of star witness proceedings before the coronavirus outbreak. The hearing room was nearly empty except for Bricker and a few colleagues, as most senators took part remotely, but their questioning was sharp as tempers flared among members. Senator Brian Schatz, Democrat Hawaii, went after Republicans, saying the hearing was a sham. With their questions, Schatz said the Republicans are trying to bully the heads of private companies into making a hit job on political leaders. All three companies have scrambled to stem the tide of material that incites violence and spreads lies and baseless conspiracy theories in their efforts to police misinformation about the election. Twitter and Facebook have imposed a misinformation label on some content from the president, who has about 80 million followers. Trump has refused to publicly commit to accepting the results if he loses the presidential contest. He has also raised the baseless prospect of mass fraud in the vote by mail process. None of the 5 states that mail ballots to all voters have seen significant cases of fraud. Starting Tuesday, Facebook still isn't accepting any new political advertising. Previously booked political ads will be able to run until the polls close November 3rd, when all political advertising will temporarily be banned. Google, which owns YouTube, is halting political ads after the polls closed. Twitter banned all political ads last year. And that's from the Associated Press. Now, it's going to be interesting to see just what happens on those 3 platforms, and it is also a reason why many people are migrating to other platforms such as Parler, MeWe, USA Live, BitChute, Vimeo, and other places. I know I myself have places or have accounts with those that I had mentioned. And yeah, I mean, here we sit 5 days before the election, and it'll be interesting to see what happens on social media throughout the election or throughout the next 5 days and on election day. And I will be right here bringing it to you. We're just about 4 days away from the election. We're on the last weekend, and a lot is happening, and there's a lot of momentum, or as one article calls it, Trump momentum, heading into this final weekend. This coming from our good friends over at the American Thinker, and says Trump momentum rolling toward election day by Brian Jundeff. Election day is almost here. Some things will end, like incessant campaign commercials, much to the relief of voters on both sides of the aisle. Other things will continue, like protests and riots, as we're seeing in Philadelphia, and as Kamala Harris promised. Despite more than 5 years of slings and arrows hurled at President Trump to derail his campaign, transition, and administration, Trump has a spring in his step. Not just when he is dancing to the YMCA song at the end of each rally, but in his entire demeanor. He's cool, confident, and on top of his game, unlike his opponent Joe Biden, who is frequently bumbling and incoherent. Whether he forgets Mitt Romney's name, thinks he's running for Senate, or calls his current opponent George, his campaign does not radiate confidence or assurance. Even Democrat operatives, media cranks, or campaign consultants are starting to panic. Trump has the momentum, but I prefer to call it Trump-mentum, a healthy dose of mojo in the final week of the campaign. Trump has choreographed October as carefully as a finale of a season of The Apprentice, complete with mystery, fun, and engagement of his supporters to a degree not seen in recent political memory. Start with the polls. Wrong 4 years ago and likely wrong again this year. Earlier this month, Biden had a 16-point lead nationally in a CNN poll. Even Rasmussen, one of the most accurate 2016 pollsters, gave Biden a 12-point lead a few weeks ago. But now it's Trump-mentum season, erasing a Biden lead, and this week Rasmussen has Trump up by a point over Biden. The Trafalgar Group, the most accurate pollster in 2016, predicts Trump's re-election. Trafalgar uses shorter and simpler surveys and measures the neighbor question. Who do you think your neighbor is voting for? Gallup asked something similar, not who you want to win, but instead who you think will win. Trump tops Biden 56 or 40%. Gallup also asked registered voters, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? 56% said yes, compared to only 32% answering no. Why jump off a winning horse? Trump-mentum. Blacks comprise only 13% of the U.S. population and vote almost exclusively for Democrat presidential candidates. Past Republican candidates have captured no more than 10% of the voting bloc, Trump winning only 8% in 2016. Rasmussen shows Trump approval among blacks at 25%, and when asked who they would vote for, 30% of blacks answered Trump. Now, if Trump as a Republican captures half of that, it would be unprecedented in a presidential election, a historic realignment, Trump-mentum. Which campaign has energy and enthusiasm, and which is as exciting as a root canal? Trump rallies draw tens of thousands, many waiting in line in mile-long lines for a day or more in the hopes of getting into the rally. Biden, in contrast, draws only 10, a few dozen attendees, mostly journalists and Secret Service. Look at these pictures from Conservative Treehouse revealing how Ivanka Trump drew a larger audience than former President Barack Obama, who, to his credit, engaged a larger audience than candidate Joe Biden. Stop for a minute here. Looking at the picture, I can definitely see a lot of encouragement and enthusiasm, some more so for Trump than I do for Biden. I mean, I don't know how others do, but still. Those are the formal rallies. What about the spontaneous Trump events? Parades and caravans in Democrat strongholds like Brooklyn, Beverly Hills, and New Jersey. Trump-mentum. October is a month of surprises, particularly ahead of a presidential election. The media gave Trump a 5-year colonoscopy with a bunch of non-stories and duds. The worst we will hear between now and Election Day is how many scoops of ice cream Trump receives when he returns to the White House after a day of campaign rallies. Biden, on the other hand, is a daily news fest. Despite censorship and willful denial by traditional and social media, stories of decades-long family corruption, selling U.S. interests to Russia, Ukraine, China, and other less than friendly regimes, along with swittered photos and videos of Biden family members, fodder for blackmail of the potential future president of the United States. These crimes are coming to light slowly but steadily. Hunter Biden, as a recent Tucker Carlson interview with Tony Bobulinski outlined, is a Biden family laundromat, laundering pay-to-play money from corrupt regimes to keep the big guy living our life way beyond his government salary means. These revelations are bad enough that some early voters want to change their votes. Google searches for change my vote surge among revelations of sex tapes and grift from Hunter Biden's laptop. Which way do you think these votes are being changed? Trump-mentum. just for fun, pretend that there were no polls and that we each had to form an opinion of the upcoming election based on what we observe, enthusiasm, rallies, messaging, and campaign confidence. If the weather gal says it will be warm and sunny and I see snowflakes outside my window, who will I believe? My own eyes or the opinions of the self-proclaimed smart set? Lastly, Trump is a winner. He knows what he has been up against. Trump is an unstoppable force, knocking many into the ditch from his primary opponents and Hillary Clinton in 2016 to Schiff, Nadler, and Pelosi, from Avenatti and Michael Cohen to the entirety of the mainstream media. Betting against Trump is a losing bet, as the last 5 years demonstrated, especially when he is confident and on a roll, as he is now. He has to momentum and it's best to stay out of his way. Now, I know that okay, in in the mornings I go for a small walk, just a couple of houses either way where I live, and I've seen two Trump signs and a Trump flag. I have not seen any Biden signs, but then again, I am in Southwest Florida where it is predominantly Republican. But yeah, I mean, just watching the news and just seeing what I see everywhere, there really is a lot of momentum going the president's way. As a matter of fact, this article from Deseret News explains just what the Trump train is. Trump supporting caravans are traversing cities across America. And and the picture is a caravan of Trump supporters, and there's a photo of a guy posing next to his SUV in which he flies a Trump flag and an American flag outside his home in Brigham City, Utah, this past Tuesday. And there's another photo which had a caravan of Trump supporters traveling down Utah's I-15 from Tremonton to St. George Saturday in a line of cars that stretched nearly 6 miles long. Large flags supporting the re-election of the president billowed behind SUVs, minivans, sedans, and most prominently trucks. So-called Trump trains have been organized by concerned citizens in states across the country, including Ohio, Texas, Arizona, and Oregon. It's a trend that picked up steam ahead of Tuesday's November 3rd election. Vexillologists, or people who study flags, have taken note that the increased use of flags in support of presidential candidates this year. Scott Gunter, professor emeritus at San Jose State University and board member for the Flag Heritage Foundation and the Flag Research Center, said flags are typically associated with nations, peoples, and militaries. More than any other way of expressing who you're voting for, like a yard sign or button, a flag might be seen as a reflection of a person's identity. For John Hedrigson, Salt Lake City resident and the immediate past president of the North American Vexillological Association, this year's unprecedented display of political flags is a sign of how divisive the election has become. The emotional impact of flags is extremely great, Hedrigson said. The stars and stripes are big on the United States because they are a symbol of what represents our unity, which is the opposite of what these caravan flags represent. They definitely represent what divides us. But Brian Owens, 52, an account manager from Brigham City, didn't organize the I-15 Trump train with the intention of dividing people. Rather, he wanted to bring like-minded people together to exercise their First Amendment rights. He led the charge Saturday in a silver Denali with an American flag on top and a Trump flag below. He said the turnout exceeded his expectations. There were people waiting on on-ramps and cheering from overpasses. More than 200 people participated as drivers or passengers on the train, according to Owens. I was taken aback, Owens said. I feel like it's a groundswelling of average people who don't feel like they have a way to express themselves and these trains give them a chance to get out and be a part of something bigger than themselves. Flags on cars. It's unclear whether the tradition of caravanning with flags in support of President Trump started. One early example emerged from a retirement community in Central Florida in June. Individuals paraded around the village's community in golf carts with signs and flags lauding Trump. The event captured national media attention when the president thanked the great people of the villages and retweeted a clip of a man driving by and yelling "White Power." The president later deleted the tweet. In August, a 600-car pro-Trump caravan in Portland, Oregon was followed by an altercation in which the support of the right-wing group Patriot Prayer was shot and killed. There have been flotillas or boat parades in support of Trump. In September, at least 4 boats sank during a boat parade in Lake Travis in Texas because of massive waves caused by the group of boats. But many other pro-Trump parades and rallies have taken place without incident over the past year. Prior to 2020, many celebrations and traditions have involved flags displayed on cars. Carolyn Gallagher, a professor at American University, noted that people in the South and other regions have long displayed Confederate flags on trucks. On Cinco de Mayo in San Jose, Mexican Americans are known to drive around with the Mexican flag as a symbol of their heritage, Gwinter said. It's also common for sports fans to put flags on their cars in support of their favorite team, and there's also a strong tradition of using flags in parades, he added. Hedvigson said he doesn't remember ever seeing flags used this much in past presidential campaigns. And it's not just Biden or Trump flags, but Biden flags too, he said. Paul Swenson, an owner and CEO of Colonial Flag, based in Sandy, said the 40-year-old store has seen more interest in candidate flags this year than ever before. The store is politically neutral, but while it sold about 250 Trump flags, it's only sold 12 for Biden. I've never seen anything quite like this year. We're seeing strong emotional feelings on both sides, said Hedvigson. Flags represent or reflect the feelings that are already there. That's what they do. It gives people the opportunity to show their feelings in a very public way. Sending a message. On Saturday, in the parking lot of a Shell gas station in Pleasant Grove, a man was selling Trump paraphernalia, including flags, t-shirts, bumper stickers, and flags. Sean Jensen, 22, pulled up to the makeshift store, housed under a white tent, to pick up a flag for the I-15 Trump train. A construction worker who lives in Eagle Mountain, Jensen said caravanning is a conservative way of protesting. We all have jobs. We can't go out there and loot and protest, so this is our way, Jensen said. Jensen planned to buy a flag that said, Trump 2020, no more BS. Many of the flags available for sale at the tent featured strong language. Liberals are always in your face. They want to press their opinion on you, but you can't say anything to them or you're automatically a racist. And that's not true, said Jensen. I have freedom of speech. I can say what I feel too. Another flag for sale showed Trump's face superimposed on the American flag with the words, "A hero will rise." Another said, "Liberty or death, Second Amendment, 1789," and showed 2 guns crossed behind the image of a skull. There were also several flags featuring the coiled snake and the "Don't Tread on Me" message from the Gadsden flag, which was used during the American Revolution and adopted by the Tea Party in 2009. Kurt Crosby, 62, lives in Cedar Hills in Utah County and sells honey for a living. Temporarily, he's also selling flags and other Trump campaign items in the same Shell parking lot, although he avoids those with crude language. From a trailer attached to his gray Chevy 4x4, Crosby said he has sold several hundred Trump flags, as well as yard signs and hats. People are glad to see it, said Crosby. You can't find this stuff at Macy's, Walmart, or Target. Crosby says the mainstream media downplays support for Trump. It's one of the reasons he says people feel the need to gather together and show their approval. Owens agrees media coverage of the election isn't always 50-50. That's part of my frustration, Owens said. If they're not going to show it, I'm going to make sure that people across I-15 through the state of Utah know that there is a group of us that feel the same way that we do. It's my privilege to live in this country to be able to do so. Next, it will be Owens' privilege to vote, which he prefers to do in the booth on Election Day. In the future, he says he may plan more patriotic projects. I will wait until after the election to decide. And that's just one of the examples of a Trump train, and that's in Utah. Meanwhile, over in Philadelphia, there there's another going on, or rather, in Pennsylvania, there's another going on. This article from the Washington Examiner: Facebook, Trump, and the fight to win Pennsylvania. When thousands of Trump supporters and an estimated 2,000 cars and trucks gathered for the Interstate 70 Trump train, a road rally covering Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania last weekend, I asked many of them how they had learned about the event. Nearly every person said they heard about it on Facebook. That was especially important, they added, because there was little or no coverage of such events. This weekend there will be another giant car and truck rally, the pro-Trump PA Turnpike relay parade, this one across the highway that joins eastern and western Pennsylvania. I asked the organizer how he's getting the word out. The answer: Facebook. In late September, there was yet another road rally that also included a traditional gathering in a square in North Huntington Township, about a half-hour east of Pittsburgh. It was organized, of course, on Facebook. Everybody sees Trump rallies. In the final days of the campaign, the president is flying around the country, holding big, raucous events at airports that create a sinking contrast to the small, restrained gatherings held by Democrat challenger Joe Biden. At the heart of the Trump campaign, but the heart of the Trump campaign has nothing officially to do with the Trump campaign. There's a pro-Trump movement that has grown up organically in Pennsylvania, perhaps the most important swing state in the 2020 election. All on their own, without the help of the campaign or the Republican Party, devoted Trump supporters are organizing for what they believe will be a Trump victory. And they're doing it with Facebook. It is hard to imagine the level of organizing that is currently going on without the social media giant. Yet at the same time, the very people who are using Facebook to organize pro-Trump events in Pennsylvania are also chafing under Facebook's restriction on their ability to discuss politics with like-minded people in their own state and around the country. Facebook shut me down twice in 2 days, said a Krupka of Penn Township, who is organizing Sunday's Trump Turnpike rally. They disabled my ability to share and post in other groups. The Facebook crackdown happened after Krupa posted articles that did not meet the approval of Facebook censors, and when, because of that, he was denied access to the site, that meant he was also denied the ability to organize as well, and that means there are times when he has no access to his main organizing tool. When I asked about events coming up in the next couple of days, Krupa said, I don't know, I can't get on Facebook right now. Mike Desso and his friend Dan Sudsina organized a September rally, which attracted about 1,200 vehicles. They created a Facebook page called the Pro-Trump NHC Rally, with NHC standing for North Huntington Township. Facebook was huge in organizing that, Desso told me. We would not have been able to get that many people involved in it if we had not had a platform like Facebook. And now Destro wants to keep the page going, and it is a private group with 3,488 members, as a page where people can discuss the news, but he's constantly running into Facebook censorship. I would love to go in there instead of a discussion about the Hunter Biden emails, Destro told me, but Facebook is going to take those pages down. Destro has also found that his members cannot mention the name of the man widely discussed as being the whistleblower that led to President Trump's impeachment. You still can't say that on Facebook, Destro said. Belle Mulhern, 18 years old of Westmoreland County, became something of a star of the walkaway campaign last summer when she published on Facebook an account of her earlier support for Bernie Sanders and her conversion to conservatism and support for President Trump. She is also helping Krupa organize the coming Turnpike rally, which inevitably involves Facebook, but she too has to deal with Facebook's suppression of political speech. She discovered that when she started a small group dissecting the fake news, in which she and her friends post news articles and discuss them, every day I get at least one notification that this or that post was taken down because it involves community guidelines. Mulhern told me it's irritating. It's more than irritating for Trump supporters engaged in a determined bid to overcome the odds against Trump's re-election. Some of the supporters most inclined to get involved in organizing for Trump on their own, without the assistance of the campaign or party, are also the most likely to run afoul of Facebook's censorship. When Facebook cracks down on them and locks them out of the site, it cracks down on their ability to organize for Trump. The censorship has brought down the wrath of Washington Republicans, down on Facebook and the other social media giants, Twitter especially at the moment, but talks with pro-Trump activists in this key state show what a complicated issue social media is in today's campaigning. Yes, Facebook infuriates them and infringes on free expression, but it also allows them to organize a 2,000-car rally for Trump. And right now, with the election just days away, that is critical. Yes, indeed. And in yesterday's video, I had mentioned just what happened at the Wednesday hearing in Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. I might delve into that a little more in a separate video, not connected to the weekend review. Might do that after the election. But yeah, I mean, with the election just 4 days away and the polls in California closing 4 days, 6 hours, 17 minutes, 10 seconds from now, things are bound to get interesting, and just stay tuned and find out what happens. And that's going to do it for the news for this week. I am Bulow. Again, if you like what you watched, please go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. Also subscribe and tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell an enemy or two even. And I will be back next week. Until next time, peace.